Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Week 8 NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. We're going to go position by position, quarterback through tight end, touch on all the plays that I'm interested in for this week. Not going to talk about every single player at each position, but really just the guys that I'm going to have the most exposure to, that I feel like I'm going to be playing in my lineups. As the week's gone on, I've been able to kind of narrow down my player pool, really key in on who I'm looking to target at each position. So before we do get started, guys, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. And if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe as well. I am uploading a ton of NFL content right now. I'm getting up 4 to 5 NFL videos a week, putting up a ton of content, so would appreciate it if you would subscribe. Be sure to click that notification bell as well, so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy these videos, and if they help you out a lot and you want to get more content from me, I have stuff available on Patreon. You can check that out. Link down below in the description if that does interest you. But let's go ahead and take a look at this slate. We will start off at quarterback. So this is definitely an interesting slate. We do have some weather concerns, not necessarily, bad weather, but wind is a pretty big concern for this slate. And normally I don't factor in, weather too much into who I like. If I'm really liking a guy and there's weather, normally I'm not going to get off a player, but there's definitely some big time wind gusts in some of these games. The Raiders-Browns game looks like there's going to be 25 mile per hour sustained winds with gusts around 40 miles per hour. That is greatly going to impact, deep balls. They're still going to throw the ball, but, the deep ball is definitely going to have an effect, the kicking game. The Packers-Vikings game, also going to be very windy. The Saints-Bears game, going to be very windy. I'm not a meteorologist. I look at Roto-Grinders weather report. It's pretty easy to, they break down everything for you pretty simply. I'm not a weatherman, so I just looked to this. They got those three games as sort of their, games that I guess would be the most impactful. I still think you can play guys in those games. Like, I like Derek Carr this week. I'm not going to get off of Derek Carr just because of the win, but it is something at least worth noting. I think we could see maybe these games won't be as high scoring as expected. The totals have dropped in a lot of these games. Like the Raiders-Browns game, the totals dropped 5 points. The Packers-Vikings game, the totals dropped 4.5 points. This Bengals-Titans game also has a little bit of win, but not as bad. That total's dropped 3 points. And then the Saints-Bears game total has dropped 2 points. So we're definitely seeing, totals drop. People are betting on the under because of the weather and because of the wind. So I guess that's something worth noting, but still, we'll talk about the guys I like. If I like players, if I'm really on them and, there's wind, I'm not really going to be too concerned. So at the top of the quarterback position, we got Patrick Mahomes, the most expensive option at 8,100. So obviously it is a great spot for Patrick Mahomes. At home against the Jets, they should absolutely steamroll the Jets here. Right now they're favored by almost 3 touchdowns. That's really my only concern, is that they're big time favorites here. There's a legit shot that Patrick Mahomes doesn't play in the fourth quarter because they're winning by 4 or 5 touchdowns. Obviously, if they're winning by 4 or 5 touchdowns, it's likely that Mahomes is probably the reason why. I think, though, we might see them lean a little bit more on the running game in this game, especially late in the game. They're going to have a lead, most likely. They're going to win this game by probably multiple touchdowns. I think I'd rather play Russell Wilson over Patrick Mahomes this week. Wilson's going to be in a more competitive game against the 49ers. Although the 49ers have a good defense, that doesn't bother me too much with a guy like Russell Wilson. I mean, he's pretty much matchup proof at this point. This guy can just go out there and produce no matter who he's going up against. I mean, he's got over pretty much 25 Draftkings points in every game so far this season. Even in a tough spot against the Patriots, he put up 34 DK points. Russell Wilson has definitely had a really good schedule this year. Hasn't really had any tough matchups besides New England. This is probably the second toughest matchup that he's had this year, maybe the most toughest. I still wouldn't let that get me off of Russell Wilson. I mean, he's just so good, so efficient. They're letting him throw a lot more this year. At 7,800, I do prefer him over Mahomes. I prefer him over Aaron Rodgers, especially now that there is some wind concerns in that Minnesota-Green Bay game. Definitely would rather go with Russell Wilson. This Seattle-San Francisco game is, a game that doesn't have really any weather concerns, and we're seeing, a really high total, 54 total, which actually, I believe, leads the slate now, since a lot of these games have dropped in total. The San Francisco-Seattle game at 54 leads the slate. So really good spot for Russell Wilson. Definitely like him at the top. I think he is my favorite pay-up option. I also do like Lamar Jackson for tournaments. I think with his price coming down, Lamar hasn't been the elite fantasy QB that he was last year. He had a big game last week or 2 weeks ago against Philly. Only threw for 186 yards and a touchdown, but he was able to contribute with 108 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. I mean, that's just the kind of upside that Lamar Jackson has. This is a guy that, even though he might only throw for 150 yards and 1 touchdown, like he can still give you 25, 30 DraftKings points because he can add, 80, 90, 100 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Like he just gives you so much upside, but with his dual threat, rushing ability. I like him a lot, even in a tough matchup against Pittsburgh. I like that the price has come down. Last year, Lamar Jackson was the most expensive quarterback like every single week, no matter who he was going up against. So far this season, we've seen his price come down. We're seeing guys like Mahomes, Wilson, even Aaron Rodgers be more expensive than Lamar. And while those guys have played very well this season, I still think Lamar is one of the highest upside options week in and week out. I like him here at 7,400. Between him and Russell Wilson's probably the much safer option, but I do expect Lamar to be pretty low owned this week. So I think in tournaments, Lamar does look really good at 7,400. He's really affordable on Yahoo as well. He's $34. He's the same price as Justin Herbert, same price as Josh Allen. I definitely like Lamar at that $34 salary on Yahoo. But then in the 6K range, there's really one play I've keyed in on the 6K range and not much else. Herbert against Denver is fine to go to, coming off a massive game against Jacksonville, but his price is coming up. He's probably just more of a tournament play for me. Like if I were to look to stack him up with Keenan Allen in tournaments, I think that's fine, but I feel like in my main lineup, cash games, probably won't be going to Justin Herbert. Kind of the same with Ryan Tannehill. Like if you want to stack up Tannehill, maybe stack him up with A.J. Brown or Jonnu Smith and then like run it back with Gio Bernard or one of the Cincinnati receivers. Like you could do that, but Tannehill I don't think I'm going to be playing in cash games at 6,800. Joe Burrow's the guy that I've really keyed in on in this 6K range, and he's definitely my favorite play like in the mid-range. Probably one of my favorite plays at quarterback overall. I mean, Burrow, he's just been so good this year. He definitely has had some low-floor games, but, against Baltimore, you wouldn't expect him to do very well against Baltimore. That was really his worst game of the season. And other than that, he's been over 17 DraftKings points in every game, has multiple games over 20 DK points. He's coming off his best game of the season against Cleveland, where he went for 38 DK points, 406 passing yards, and 3 touchdowns. Also had a rushing touchdown. I mean, Burrow, like his passing volume is just so high this year. He's leading the league in pass attempts. He's throwing the ball, 40, 45 times a game. The Cincinnati defense is so bad that it's causing, the Bengals to be playing from behind pretty much every week. I would expect that to be the case once again this week. Even at home, I believe the Bengals, right now the Bengals are 5 or 6 point dogs. Like, still a really good spot for Joe Burrow. This game does have a pretty high total. It's got some win concerns, but it's not going to be as bad as some of the other games. So I definitely like Joe Burrow at 6,200. I think he's probably my favorite quarterback overall this week. I like him a lot on Yahoo as well. He is very affordable over there, only $27. Definitely way too cheap on Yahoo. Coming in cheaper than like Drew Brees, Stafford, coming in cheaper than Baker Mayfield. I like Derek Carr, but he is also cheaper than Derek Carr, so I think I'd probably side with Burrow there, especially now that we do have win concerns in that Raiders-Browns game. But yeah, really like Joe Burrow at quarterback in that 6K range. And then if we're talking about value plays under 6K, there's 2 guys. I mentioned them in my first look video at the beginning of the week. I still like them a lot. Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, are by far my favorite values at quarterback. Carr, with this win concern, he gets a little bit of a bump down, but I wouldn't get off of him like, I wouldn't full fade him by any means. If I was going to have like 20% exposure to Derek Carr at the beginning of the week, maybe you bump that down a little bit. But I still think Carr is definitely in play. I'm still going to have exposure to the passing game in this game. I still like Darren Waller a lot. I still think, Jarvis Landry, Rashad Higgins, these guys are good plays with Odell out. If Austin Hooper sits again, which it looks like he's going to, you could definitely target Harrison Bryant or David Njoku. Like, there's still a lot of guys I like in this game. I think we're still going to see points scored here. I mean, even though the total has dropped, it's still got like a 50.5 total. I still like Derek Carr quite a bit. If you are concerned with the win, then you could drop down to Jimmy Garoppolo, who is definitely a little bit safer now. Garoppolo, his floor is pretty low, but this is definitely one of the best matchups that he's had so far this season. This Seattle team, really bad against the pass. They really can't stop anyone through the air this year. They're allowing the most passing yards per game. it's a really good spot for Jimmy G. They're down some of their running backs, so maybe in this game we might see them throw the ball a little bit more than they would. Garoppolo, his floor is so low because this San Francisco team just wants to run the ball as much as possible. We saw he's only against Miami, he threw the ball 17 times, against the Jets only 16 times. They were playing with the lead in those games, or at least in the Jets game they were. This is a game, though, against Seattle. Seattle has a really explosive offense. You would expect them to put up points. I think we're going to have to see Jimmy G throw the ball a little bit more than he normally would. And at 5,400 against the Seattle team that has really struggled to stop quarterbacks, and I've just been playing quarterbacks against the Seahawks all year. Not going to stop this week. I definitely like Garoppolo at 5,400. Him and Derek Carr are by far my favorite values at quarterback this week if I'm looking under 6K. But yeah, we touched on quarterback. Let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. So at running back, if I'm paying up this week, I said it in my first look video, and I think I'm sticking with it. Alvin Kamara is my favorite pay up option. We will need to watch the status of Michael Thomas. That is one of the big injuries we're going to have to watch heading into Sunday. He did get in practice on Thursday. I believe he practiced in limited fashion on Thursday. I'm recording this video on Friday around 12:30 Eastern time, around lunchtime. So we haven't gotten practice reports yet for Friday, but if Thomas plays, that's a little bit of a bump down for Alvin Kamara, but I still like Kamara a ton. Even against the Bears, not the best spot. Kamara just gets so much usage, both through the running game and the passing game. Even if Thomas plays, he might be limited a bit since, he hasn't played since week 1. Kamara should still get his normal workload of, anywhere from 10 to 15 carries, anywhere from 6 to 8 targets, potentially more. At 8,200, he's the guy I like to pay up for. I know people are going to go to Derrick Henry, and although it is a great spot for Derrick Henry against the Bengals, the Bengals' run defense is just so bad. I don't really like paying up for Derrick Henry just because he kind of needs you, or he kind of needs to get you. He needs to have one of those games where he goes for 150 rushing yards and multiple touchdowns to really get there. We saw him do it against Houston, 212 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. He did. That was kind of an outlier performance. He broke off a 95-yard touchdown run. If he doesn't break off that long touchdown run, that's 16 points, 17 points you take away from him. Look, if he goes for 150 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and he gets there and he has a 30-point game, then obviously, I'll take the L. But Henry's just not a guy that I ever feel like I have to pay up for because he doesn't get the pass game usage that some of these guys like Kamara do. Kamara, he can get you, 60, 70 rushing yards. He can get you 8 catches for 50 yards, can get you 20 points without scoring a touchdown, whereas Derrick Henry, he's not scoring 20 points unless he gets multiple touchdowns or unless he gets, 150 rushing yards. I'd rather go to Alvin Kamara even in a tougher spot. I think Derrick Henry's going to be more popular, so definitely for that reason, I would rather play Kamara. I just feel like Kamara's floor is much higher than Derrick Henry's. We know Derrick Henry has a big ceiling, but Kamara also has a really good ceiling, especially if he finds the end zone a few times. If he gets 2 touchdowns, if Kamara scores twice somehow, if maybe he gets a rushing touchdown or receiving touchdown, with how much he's involved in both the running game and the passing game, there's a legit shot he could score 35, 40 points if he scores multiple times, because we know he's getting probably 50, 60 rushing yards. He's probably getting at least 5 or 6 catches for 50, 60 yards. You add that on top of the 2 touchdowns, that's 30 points. So I'd rather play Kamara between Henry and Kamara. Dalvin Cook, I think, is a really good GPP play. I don't expect many people to be on him. It is his first game back from injury. I'm always concerned with Dalvin Cook when it comes to injuries because it seems like the guy's always injured. But when he's healthy, he's one of the most talented running backs in the league. The Green Bay has really struggled against the run this season. They've definitely allowed fantasy points to running backs. We haven't gotten officially that Cook's going to play, but all signs are pointing to him playing as the time I'm recording this video on Friday. So I like Cook for tournaments. I think I'd actually rather play Cook over Derrick Henry if he's going to be lower owned. Derrick Henry's probably going to be a fade for me. If he goes out there and rushes for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns and scores 35 points, then I'll just take the L. But I'm probably going to be underweight on Derrick Henry. I'd rather play Kamara. I'd rather play Dalvin Cook at lower ownership. Aaron Jones, this is the one big injury that we're going to have to watch heading into Sunday. So at the time I'm recording this on Friday, we haven't gotten Friday practice reports yet, but we did get word that, Jones did not practice on Thursday. He has yet to practice so far, at least throughout the week. We'll see if he gets in any practice on Friday. They've already come out and said, though, that they're going to be very careful with Aaron Jones. They're not going to rush him back. My best guess is he does not play this week, and I'm going into this slate assuming he does not play. Things could change, obviously, We could get word Saturday night that he's going to try and warm up and play. We could get word, after I record this video, practice reports could come out and we see the Aaron Jones practice on Friday. But all kind of all signs are pointing to him being out. So we will talk about Jamal Williams, who I do like quite a bit when we get down there. But Kareem Hunt, I think, factoring in price, Kareem Hunt's probably my favorite running back to pay up for overall. $6,900 on DraftKings, $30 on Yahoo, I believe. Yeah, $30 on Yahoo. Love this spot for Kareem Hunt against the Raiders. Raiders have really struggled against the run this season. Kareem Hunt's, he's getting the usage right now. Nick Chubb is still out, so Kareem Hunt should be locked in for about 20 touches a game. They're playing him on like 80, 90% of the snaps. He's getting a true, kind of workhorse role, getting 10 to 15 carries, sometimes more. Going to get 4 to 5 targets as well. He's involved in the passing game. With the wind, we might see these teams lean on the running game a little bit more. So I like Kareem Hunt a ton. I think he's clearly like the number one pay-up option at running back. He will be popular, but I think for good reason. Really strong play. Like him a lot on both sides. Definitely one of my favorite running backs overall this week. I think there's other guys, like if you wanted to pivot to Jonathan Taylor in tournaments, I don't mind that because it is a really good spot for Jonathan Taylor. The Lions have really struggled against the run this season. Taylor should be much lower owned than Kareem Hunt, so I wouldn't mind that in tournaments. I don't love much else, though. Like, I'm probably not going to be on CEH, probably not going to be on James Conner. I do want to talk about, the Seattle backfield, and I want to talk about Jamal Williams. So right now, like I said earlier, as I'm recording this video on Friday, we haven't gotten many Friday practice reports yet. We did get word, though, that Joe Mixon is going to be out, so we will talk about Gio Bernard in a second. But another big, kind of team injuries we're going to have to watch is the Seattle backfield. At the time I'm recording this on Friday, all three of Chris Carson, Carlos Hyde, and Travis Homer, all three of those guys did not practice on Thursday. We'll see what happens Friday once we get practice reports, but I talked about DJ Dallas in my first look video. He might be a really good value play depending on what happens there. I think, if Carson's out and Hyde plays, I do like Hyde. I think if Carson plays, like if they're all healthy, I probably won't be going to Seattle's backfield. It just kind of comes down to the injuries of these guys. If some of them miss, like if Carson and Hyde are out, I'll definitely be interested in DJ Dallas. If Carson plays and Hyde plays, I really won't be going to any of them. If Carson's out, though, I think Hyde's interesting, assuming he plays. It's really hard to break down the Seattle backfield right now just because we have so many question marks, but we'll talk about, like DJ Dallas I think could be a value. I'm not going to plug him in just because we don't know yet, and because there are other guys in this price range I do like, but definitely keep an eye on Seattle's backfield. Depending on what happens there, we could definitely, get some value with maybe DJ Dallas or maybe Carlos Hyde. But Joe Mixon's out, like I said, so that does bring in Gio Bernard into play. Like I said earlier, I'm assuming that, Aaron Jones does not play. All signs are kind of pointing to him not playing. So Jamal Williams, I'm going to like a lot, assuming Aaron Jones does not play. Jamal Williams was the highest owned player on the slate last week, I'm pretty sure. Had a really good game for his price. He was $4K. He was minimum salary. Had 21 DK points. Got 19 carries for 77 yards, 5 targets, 4 catches for 37 yards. He did get a rushing touchdown last week against Houston. That was a really good matchup, and it's, again, another great spot against Minnesota. Minnesota, their defense overall has not been good this year. Just not the same defensive team they used to be. I think this is a really good spot for Jamal Williams. I think even at 6,100, he is a really strong play. Even with the price coming up, I still have a lot of interest in him, especially with the wind and the weather in this game. We might see both these teams lean on the running game a little bit more. Assuming Aaron Jones is out, which I am right now, I like Jamal Williams a lot. 6,100 on DK, only $20 on Yahoo. I like that Yahoo price a lot. He's a guy that when he gets the playing time, man, he can be good for DFS. He can be good for fantasy. And if Jones is out again, which I think is going to happen, Jamal Williams should be looking at a heavy workload once again. So I like him a lot in the 6K range. With Joe Mixon out, that does bring Giovanni Bernard into play. If Aaron Jones is out, which I'm assuming, like I said, happens, I think I'd rather play Jamal Williams over Giovanni Bernard. But Bernard also had a good game last week with Joe Mixon out, and he's going to start again this week. Got 13 carries for 37 yards. Wasn't very efficient, but he did get a touchdown, a receiving touchdown. He did have 5 catches for 59 yards. Giovanni Bernard, he's one of those guys that he doesn't really have to be efficient. He's involved in the passing game. Like he'll catch 4, 5, 6 balls. He's kind of like, he's a really, really, really poor man's Alvin Kamara in that he's probably going to get 10 to 12 carries, probably going to get 5, 6, 7 targets. For 5,800, you could definitely play Giovanni Bernard. He's for sure going to be in my player pool. I don't know if he's going to make my main lineup because there's other guys I like, Kareem Hunt, Jamal Williams, assuming Jones is out. Maybe we get some value from Seattle's backfield. But if I'm playing multiple lineups, I would get exposure to Giovanni Bernard. Even with his price tag coming up, I think he's still a really good play. But then, yeah, we're going to have to take a look at the Seattle backfield. Depending on what happens there, like if Carson's out and Hyde plays, I do have interest in Carlos Hyde at 5,300. If Carson and Hyde are both out, I have a lot of interest in DJ Dallas. He's only 4K. He's pretty much the only healthy running back for Seattle right now. I mean, at 4K, like if he's their only starting running back, like I don't think they can sign anybody because if they have to sign someone, they would have to go through like COVID testing, and they wouldn't be able to do that in time for the game. There's like, let's just say all of Hyde, Carson, and Homer are all out. I mean, DJ Dallas is legit going to have to play like every snap. He'd be a stone lock at 4K. It's hard to really break down the Seattle backfield right now on Friday, but just keep an eye on that throughout the week. If you have any questions, I'll always be down in the comment section answering questions on my thoughts on the Seattle backfield. Really, it's just going to have to be a wait and see. If they're all healthy, I'll probably be fading it, but depending on who's out, could give us some value from Seattle. And there's also some value on the other side. I'm not as high on the San Francisco backs, but JaMychal Hasty could definitely be in play as a value for 5K. It looks like Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, all those guys are going to be out. Jeff Wilson got hurt last week as well, so it's probably going to be Hasty and McKinnon getting like a 50-50 split. My best guess is I'd probably lean like 60-40 in favor of Hasty. At 5K, he did look really good last week when he got touches. He was pretty efficient. He's a value guy that you could look to. There's some other guys I'd rather play, though, so I don't think Hasty's like a lock and load for me, but he would be in my player pool if I was playing multiple lineups. I guess 5K and below, he's one of the better options. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to wide receiver. We'll talk about this position. So I think at wide receiver this week, if I'm paying up, like I'm just going to try and find the salary to get up to Davante Adams. I know he is really, really expensive, but I mean, he's just been so good this season. It's a smash spot once again against Minnesota. He crushed Minnesota earlier this year, 44 Draftkings points against them, coming off a 47-point game against Houston. I mean, he's pretty much like the Michael Thomas of last season in that he's going to get double-digit targets almost every week. Aaron Rodgers literally looks to him every single play. It's a great spot. The win is somewhat of a concern, but I wouldn't, they're going to, like Davante Adams, he runs a lot of like quick slants anyway. They get him the ball quickly. They don't need to, he's not a deep play threat. I mean, he does have deep play ability, but he can do damage, catching 10-yard, 15-yard slants. So I still like Davante Adams. I think, I prefer to just try and find the salary to pay up for him if I can. I don't think I'm going to have the salary, though, to pay up at receiver, at least not in my main lineup, because, I'm going to try and get in Kareem Hunt. I like Jamal Williams a lot if Jones is out. I might try and get in Kamara as well. So we'll talk about some of these mid-range options. In this 6K range, there are definitely some guys I like here, and one of them that really stands out to me is Keenan Allen. I talked about him in my first look video at the beginning of the week. I still think he's a really strong play. 6,200 on DraftKings. Looking at Yahoo's pricing, Keenan Allen is $22 over there. I mean, he's just underpriced on both sides. Like, he's getting great usage since Justin Herbert took over at quarterback. I mean, we've seen double-digit targets in pretty much every game for Keenan Allen, and the only reason he got 2 targets against the Saints was because he got hurt in that game. I mean, his floor is just so high. Like, they're going to target him double digits multiple times, like probably 10 to 12 times, if not more. On the road in Denver is not the best spot on paper, but 6,200 is just too cheap for Keenan Allen no matter what the matchup is. The volume's going to be there. The price tag's too cheap. I think he's a really good play. If you want to stack him up with Justin Herbert in tournaments, I don't mind that at all. You could run it back with maybe a guy like Noah Fant, who is a pretty good play at the tight end position if you want to go to Noah Fant. But yeah, I do really like Keenan Allen in the 6K range. I think he is a really good play overall. I think he's probably the strongest play in that price tier. But then if we're looking below 6K, there's one guy that I want to hit on that I talked about in my first look video. Still like him a lot this week. Brandon Ayuk, 5,800 on DraftKings, also $22 on Yahoo. So Ayuk should be looking at number 1 receiver duties this week for the 49ers. Deebo Samuel has already been ruled out, which, that's going to boost Ayuk's snap percentage. He's going to be on the field way more. He should be targeted more as well. And this is a guy that when he's shown, like when they target him, when he gets the ball in his hands, he can be very explosive. He's coming off a solid game last week against the Patriots where he had 6 catches for 115 yards, 20 DraftKings points. At 5,800, the price tag did come up, but the matchup is so good. We talked about how bad Seattle struggles to defend quarterbacks and just struggling to defend the pass overall this season. They've been beat so bad through the air. I like Ayuk a lot. I think if you want to stack him up with Jimmy Garoppolo in tournaments, that makes plenty of sense. He definitely looks like one of the better plays, like in the 5K range. You got the Cincinnati receivers you could go to, like T. Higgins. Tyler Boyd, I think, is also, or Tyler Boyd's a little bit more expensive, but like T. Higgins you could look to. I wouldn't mind him. Jarvis Landry, I think, does see a bump with Odell out. 5,600, you could definitely look to Jarvis Landry. I talked about Juju in my first look video. I still don't mind him at 5,400. He's coming off a game where he got, I think, like 14 targets. Looked like their number one receiver last week. Deontay Johnson did get hurt late in that game. Johnson is going to play this week. My only concern with Pittsburgh is they do spread the ball around a lot. They have a lot of guys that can soak up targets, but I still expect Juju to be a guy that's probably going to see 6 to 8 targets most weeks, if not more. Tough matchup against Baltimore, but 5,400 is still a little bit too cheap for Juju, in my opinion. Obviously, though, Ayuk's in a much better matchup, so I would think I would rather get up to him if I can. But then if we're talking about value plays at receiver, there is some value that I want to hit on. AJ Green, whether you think he's good or not, he's 4,500 and he's seen double-digit targets back-to-back weeks. This game has one of the higher totals on the slate. I think AJ Green is definitely in play at 4,500. And if you want to stack him up with Joe Burrow, I don't mind doing that at all in tournaments. I think Green, even in cash games, is viable at 4,500. And then we need to talk about the Jets. So I think the Jets are actually a team that we can look to for some value at receiver this week. So we've already gotten word that Rashad Perriman's out, and it looks like Jamison Crowder is also going to be out. So that kind of leaves Braxton Berrios, Jeff Smith, and Denzel Mims as like the top 3 receivers for the Jets. And if I'm going to target any of these guys, Denzel Mims is definitely my preferred option at 3,200. I think he's probably, overall one of the better values at receiver if we're just talking about like punt plays. Got 7 targets last week, his first game. I think he was injured for a lot of the beginning of the season. He was one of their top picks. I can't remember where he played at in college, but he was pretty good in college. And he looked solid in his debut with the Jets. Got 4 catches, 42 yards. They were looking to get him the ball, and, with no Crowder, with no Perriman, Denzel Mims probably will lead the team in targets on Sunday. Against KC, KC's got a good defense, but the Jets are going to be playing from behind here. They're 3 touchdown underdogs. They're going to be throwing a lot this game, if not the entire game, playing catch-up, trying to keep up with this Chiefs team. I think at 3,200, Denzel Mims is a really good value at receiver, especially like in cash games. I think it's very hard for him to kill your lineup. Even if he gets 8 to 10 points, that's still pretty good at 3,200. That's not going to kill you, and he does have upside for way more. The volume should be there. We know the Jets are going to be passing a ton. I do like Denzel Mims quite a bit as a value play. Between the 3 Jets receivers, he is by far my favorite option overall. I think he gives you the most upside, and I think his target floor is the highest out of Berrios, Smith, and Mims. I would prefer to go to Mims. Did want to mention him as a value play, but let's go ahead and talk about tight end real quick just before we end the video. So at the tight end position, I actually want to try and pay up this week. Normally I like to go cheap at tight end, but I like some of the expensive options. I really like George Kittle at 7K. I think without Deebo Samuel, George Kittle's target volume should just be even more secure. We know he's pretty much like their number 1 target. He's going to probably lead the team in targets most weeks. This Seattle team, their defense, pass defense has just been so bad this season. Like I said earlier, Kittle's expensive, but if I can find a way to pay up for him, I definitely like him as one of the better pay-up options at tight end. I would prefer him over Travis Kelce this week. But Darren Waller, I think, is probably going to be the guy that I get to in my main lineup. Just given the savings, you save $1,400 dropping down from Kittle to Waller, and I wouldn't be surprised if Waller outscores Kittle. It is a great matchup for Darren Waller. The Browns have really struggled to defend tight ends this season. They've always been a team that has struggled to defend tight ends. I'm not too worried about the win when it comes to a guy like Darren Waller because he doesn't really run a ton of deep routes. They get him the ball quickly, like in slants, out routes, quick routes pretty much. They're not going to be throwing the ball deep to Darren Waller. They will, but he can do damage on 5-10 yard slants, just quick passes. So I really like Waller at 5,600, even though the win is a concern. This, like I said earlier, this game still has a really high total, still should see some points scored here. Waller's target volume is so secure in this Raiders offense. He's going to get probably 8 to 10 targets most weeks, if not more. The matchup's really good. The Browns have really struggled to defend tight ends. He's probably my favorite tight end overall this week. Darren Waller is. When you factor in price, he's the guy that I do like the most. But if I were looking for value, if I was looking to go cheap, I think Noah Fant 4,700 against the Chargers, especially if you want to stack up like Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert. If you want to stack those 2 guys up, like I said earlier, you could maybe run it back with Noah Fant for 4,700. If you want to look to someone like Hunter Henry, 4,200, I don't mind him. Jonnu Smith, 4,100, I think is in play as a value option. And then assuming Austin Hooper's out, David Njoku, 3,800. Harrison Bryant, 3,200. Both these guys would become playable. I think given the savings, I'd probably rather play Harrison Bryant just because he's the cheaper one. But both those Browns tight ends are definitely in play for me, assuming Hooper doesn't play. Looks like he's listed as doubtful. He wasn't spotted in Thursday's practice, so I am assuming that Hooper's going to be out. And I don't think we've gotten any word yet on, I don't think we have a word yet on Tyler Higbee. So he practiced in limited fashion on Thursday. If Higbee does not play this week, you could definitely look to Gerald Everett, 3,700. Got a good amount of playing time on Monday night with Higbee out. 5 targets, 4 catches, 28 yards, and a touchdown. At 3,700 against the Dolphins, Everett would definitely be in play as a value if Higbee were to be out. But yeah, I think we covered tight end, guys. I think we pretty much broke it all down position by position. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I really do appreciate you watching. If you did enjoy, hit that like button before you get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. And if you have not yet, be sure to check out my Patreon content, link down below in the description. If that does interest you, I do upload a lot of exclusive content on Patreon. So if you want to check that out, it is linked down below in the description. But best of luck this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you did enjoy. Good luck, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.